We finally have a good Thursday night football game on tap for this week. Week 11, we got Ravens versus Bengals. So I figured I would give you guys a quick 5-minute betting preview of this game, talk about the main lines, talk about where I lean in terms of those main lines, and give you a player prop watch list as well. So real quick, before I get into it, would appreciate it if you're here, if you're new, if you could subscribe to my YouTube channel if you are not already. But let's get into it. We can just get right into this Thursday night football betting preview. I'm very excited for it. Ravens versus Bengals. It's a massive game for both teams in terms of just the importance of the game, but then also in terms of the standings for the NFC North. So looking at the main lines, in terms of the spread, the Ravens are minus 3.5 point favorites pretty much anywhere you look, at least as of right now. I'm recording this on Monday. Across the board, you're getting 3.5 points in favor of the Ravens. Or if you liked the Bengals, obviously they would be plus 3.5. And if you liked the Bengals to win straight up, you could get them at plus 170. I wouldn't recommend touching the Ravens money line. The odds are a little bit too unfavorable in the high minus 180s, minus 190s. So I wouldn't touch it there. If you want to ride with the Ravens, I would recommend doing so at the spread. But if you were confident the Bengals could get the upset, plus 270 is pretty juicy. In terms of the over-under, at most places, the total is sitting at 46. Now, it opened at 44.5 and 45, and then it was quickly bet up at most books to that 46 number. But I will say, if you are located in Colorado or New Jersey, I would highly recommend downloading SportTrade if you do use promo code MODI. But the reason why I say that is because at SportTrade, you can get the over-under at 44.5 at minus 113 odds. That's a really good price. FanDuel has the over-under at 45, but it's priced at minus 115. So that's an awesome price at SportTrade in terms of the total. We'll talk about that in a little bit. In terms of the spread, you're getting the best odds, on both sides. Also at SportTrade, so highly recommend checking it out if you are in Colorado or New Jersey. In terms of the game itself, and the matchup, both teams are coming off of pretty brutal losses. Heading into the week, you would have thought both these teams would have won. They both lost in pretty disgusting, brutal fashion. The Ravens blowing a 14-point lead in the fourth quarter to the Browns to lose 33-31. Deshaun Watson couldn't get anything going the entire game, but he led them to the fourth quarter comeback. Obviously, a huge pick six, huge interception was a big deal in terms of the Browns' comeback, but still a very tough loss for the Ravens when you consider the fact that they were leading the entire game. And then on the Bengals side, they were pretty big favorites, 5.5 to 6.5 point favorites against the Texans. They lost that one, and they themselves had a pretty impressive fourth quarter comeback. They were down 10 points in the fourth quarter. They were able to tie it up, and then only to watch their defense blow it and give up the game-losing field goal, game-winning for the Texans as time expired. So when you look at the importance of this game, look at the NFC North standings. They're pretty insane right about now. The Ravens are in first at 7-3. A win would have been massive for their chances to win the division. Then the Browns and the Steelers are right behind the Ravens. They're both sitting at 6-3. They both already have victories over the Ravens. Now the Ravens split with the Browns. They went 1-1, but the Ravens lost their first game against the Steelers. So that would be an important rematch whenever that one happens. And then the Bengals are in last at 5-4. Already having lost to both the Browns and the Ravens. So very important game for both teams for different reasons. For different reasons. For the Ravens, it's so they can secure the lead in their division and possibly a 1 seed, depending on what happens with other teams in the AFC. From the Bengals' perspective, it's literally just keeping their playoff hopes alive. Massive game. I'm very excited for it. My favorite pick when looking at the main lines for this game is that over at 44.5 at minus 113. That's strictly EV, expected value, price shopping, getting an incredible price. So I would recommend locking that in at SportTrade at minus 113 if you're in those states. If not, I would put a little bit less on the over 45 at minus 115. The SportTrade number is a 1.5 unit play, which I rarely do. I normally try to stick to 1 unit and below. We're getting such a good price. I'm very confident that's going to beat the closing line value. So I'd recommend putting 1.5 units on the SportTrade one. If you can only get it at FanDuel, I would say just a unit on that. Both defenses are good. The Ravens defense, they just let the Browns hang 33 on them. Granted, yes, some of that did have to do with turnovers, but still 33 points on them. And then the Bengals defense is also good, but they're going to be missing Trey Hendrickson, which I think is massive. And CJ Stroud just shredded them. So they're coming off of a bad game and they're reeling. In terms of the spread, I do lean the Ravens here as well, but I will admit I'm not as confident. I don't feel as good about the Ravens minus 3.5 as I do the over. The Ravens are consistently the number one team in terms of advanced metrics like DVOA. DVOA loves the Ravens, but for whatever reason, they slow down and they lose momentum in the fourth quarter. Now, this was a stat from Aaron Schatz at FTN Network. He posted a stat on Twitter about the Ravens' offensive DVOA, quarters 1 through 3 versus quarter 4. Quarters 1 through 3, they're top 3 to 6 offense, right? Either whatever you look at in the individual quarters of 1, 2, and 3, they're top 3 to 6 offense. In the fourth quarter, they're down to 23rd. That makes sense because they have had games where they've let off the gas after leading. It led to some losses against the Steelers and the Browns. It also led to games being closer than they should be against the against the Cardinals, who randomly came back and covered that spread. In the fourth quarter is generally when the Bengals tend to heat up, which is what happened last game against the Texans. But as I mentioned, the injury to Trey Hendrickson, I do think is massive. And I just trust the infrastructure of the Ravens more so than I do the Bengals. The Bengals, every year, they seem a little bit hit or miss. They always start off the year slow, which happened again this year. And you would have thought they would be on their way. But that loss to the Texans is massive. And it kind of shows you that you can't just expect the Bengals to come on and win every game in the second half of the season. So I do lean the Ravens in terms of the spread. Now, there are no player props out yet, but in terms of watch list, I'm heavily looking at Mark Andrews as soon as player props are released. The Bengals defense, where they struggle the most, is against the tight end. So I could see Mark Andrews having a massive game in this one. He's also just the number one target for the Ravens. So there's a lot to look at in favor of Mark Andrews. So I'm definitely going to be targeting him when props are released. But in terms of official picks, 1.5 units on the over at Sportrade over 44.5. 1 unit if you're not in either of those states and you can only get it at 45. And also 1 unit on the Bengals, 1 unit on the Ravens minus 3.5 as well. And that's all I got. Nice, quick little betting preview for you guys. If you're tailing any of these picks, comment and let me know. And let's have a good one.